Hey everyone. So everybody's put me in quite a mood, I have to say, answering that question yesterday, why I've become a monk. And ever since then, my mind has turned into a little toddler asking, well, why this, why that, why the other. So this idea of God comes up all the time because people are like, what are you doing? What does a monk do? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to answer the big questions. Well, what are the big questions? Well, what am I? That's my big one. What am I? I mean, you can call me a human being, you can call me a man, you can call me, an American. These are all after the fact things. I want to know what in the world is this, and what? What is its nature? What is behind it? What makes it go? What's my purpose? What do I do with my life? Here I am, okay? You spit me out of a womb and raised me in a set of conditions and circumstances, and now here I am. What? Do I just do fun stuff? I tried that. Nothing stays fun. You get tired of everything after a time. I thought that I would just kind of share some things that I think make me wonder, that have caught my intrigue. This is beautiful. But just to say that that's beautiful really indicates a lot of information that I don't understand. What is beautiful? What does beautiful mean? Don't you see there's a huge storehouse of implications behind that? But certainly the system is set up in such a way that it's served as a divisor, as a means for accomplishing a task, a very specific task, a very vital and important task, but a task that is so complex that you can't just roll that word out and think that that explains it. But that makes me think. That makes me wonder. I'm interested in knowing these things. Here's another one. This a leaf, right? This is a solar power plant that has been around for I don't know how many thousands of years. Here is a device, a tiny little portable device that can take sunlight and make food from it. And how incredible is that? And there it is, as common as can be in the world that I've been born into. We can get excited about a tree and about a leaf, but I remember watching the Flintstones one time, and I was sitting there eating a carrot, right? And I was sitting there and I was thinking, God, my body is taking this carrot apart all the way down to molecules, and then knowing where in this body it needs to go to be reconstituted into a different form altogether, into muscle tissue, into blood cells, into plasma, into nerve cells, into fat. And how is that happening in here without me, who thinks this is mine, and me having any idea how it's happening or what's going on? Or I couldn't tell you the first thing about it. I'm amazed by that. I'm stunned by that. That's as personal as you can get. That's as close to me as you can get. This, can you see that? That's a mustard seed. There it is, against the whiteness of my pale face. That's a mustard seed. That's got all the technology to reproduce itself 1,000,000 times over. Boom, you've got a plant. Self-constructed, built all by itself, just following its own instructions. All of those instructions are in there. The instructions for creating a solar power plant. And, I'm not making these arguments to say that there's a God. So this idea of God, let's talk about that for a second. And what is that God? I'm going to read this little thing from Swami Vivekananda. He says, when we try to think of God as he is in his absolute perfection, we meet with miserable failure because we are limited and bound by our present constitution to see God as a man. If the buffalo desires to worship God, they, in keeping with their own nature, will see him as a huge buffalo. If a fish wishes to worship God, its concept of him would be inevitably a big fish, and man must think of him as a man, or a woman must think of him as a woman, or whatever, however you want to follow that line of thinking. So what am I here for? I'm going to use Vivekananda's words too, again, because I like him, and he said it so much clearer than I could. He said, the real study is that by which we realize the unchangeable. All right? I like this. And that is neither by reading, nor believing, nor reasoning, but by superconscious perception. When a man has reached that perfect state, he is of the same nature as the personal God. I and my Father are one. He knows himself one with Brahman, the Absolute, and projects himself as does the personal God. The personal God is the Absolute looked at through the haze of ignorance. Fascinating. We approach him with 5 senses. We can only see him as the personal God. The idea is that the self cannot be objectified. You can't look at yourself. You can see the reflection of yourself, but just by the mere definition, if something can be perceived, it is not you, because you're looking at it. You're a subject and it's the object. So that's all he's saying here. We approach him with these 5 senses. We can only see him as the personal God. How can the knower know himself? But he can cast a shadow, as it were, or a reflection. And the highest form of that shadow, that attempt of objectifying oneself, is the personal God. The self is the eternal subject, and we are eternally struggling to objectify that self, and out of that struggle has come this phenomena of the universe, that which we call matter. But these are weak attempts, and the highest objectification of the self possible to us is the personal God. There are enough people in this world that seem to have realized this, from different, across the spectrum of time, across the spectrum of cultures and nations, of genders, of religions, of levels of education, that have touched this superconscious state. Whatever it is, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I want to know. This is what I want to spend this life on. The fruit of it seems to be beautiful people. It seems the people that I've met, and I've traveled the world to find them, the people who have had this experience or who have done this work and touched this thing we call divine, are some of the most beautiful people I've ever met. The most compassionate, the most giving, the most loving, the most authentic, the most sincere people who wanted nothing from me. They wanted nothing from me. They got nothing from me, but they wanted nothing from me. They would have not benefited in the least to have convinced me of anything with an agenda. And that's my own experience.